Good day, everyone. Today, me and my group members will be explaining how the context of English language use can influence the teaching of English as second language, TSL. My group members consist of me, Muhammad Harid bin Muhammad Syazrul Izarid, Syamil Aiman bin Shu'aib, and Nur Natasha Nabila binti Muhammad Jafri. So first, I will be explaining about cultural context in English language, how it influences TESOL. English language has been widely used in Malaysian society nowadays, including the education system. Teaching English as a second language can be influenced by several contexts, but I will be focusing on the cultural context in teaching English as a second language. Language is deeply linked to culture. Teaching a language involves teaching the cultural norms, values, and practices associated with it. This includes idiomatic expressions, humor, and social convention in English show the culture of the countries where it is spoken. For example, idiomatic expressions like spill the beans or kick the bucket carry meanings that are not immediately apparent without an understanding of the cultural context from which they originate. Knowing cultural background helps learners understand how to use the language properly, such as when or how to say certain phrases. Teachers must be aware of the cultural diversities of all their students and respect them. This awareness will only help in building a learning environment where each student feels esteemed and valued. Moreover, not only the lesson will be more engaging, but also relate with the students in class. When talking about cultural context in TESOL, there must be some issues that is concerning for the teachers and has to be overcome as soon as possible. One of the issues in cultural context that shows when teaching English as a second language is teacher preparedness in addressing cultural issues in education. This refers to the preparedness of the teachers to handle classes which are full of students from different races and backgrounds. Most teachers may lack sufficient training to have a sensitive sense about culture in their teaching, which could lead to misunderstandings and exclusion of students' experiences in learning. This problem is also embedded in understanding cultural biases and ensuring that all students are treated equally. Malaysia has multiple languages spoken in different communities, for example like Malay, Chinese, Tamil, etc. Teachers frequently find it difficult to modify their teachings for students who are not fluent in Bahasa Melayu. For students whose families do not understand Malay, this lack of preparation has an impact on their academic performance and learning environment. Furthermore, this may lead to a curriculum that strongly represents the viewpoint of the majority ethnic group. Excluding minority students, lessons might, for example, place a strong emphasis on Malay language and culture, making students from diverse backgrounds feel excluded. How do we overcome these issues? So, one of the effective solutions is to implement comprehensive culturally responsive teacher training programs. So, the main goal of these programs is to give teachers the tools that they needed to comprehend and incorporate the various cultural backgrounds of their students in the classroom. This includes instruction on how to use multicultural resources, organize inclusive lessons, and identify cultural prejudice. For example, the Malaysian Ministry of Education might make professional development workshops mandatory, instructing teachers on how to create classes that represent the experiences of indigenous, Chinese, Indian, and Malay students. For example, rather than concentrating on a single topic, teachers could incorporate the contributions made by different ethnic groups to Malaysia's development in a history lesson. The academic fields of sociolinguistics and linguistics provide important perspectives on TESOL. Linguistics studies the structure of function and of language, including phonetics, syntax, semantics, and so on. Understanding these aspects helps in addressing linguistic differences and interference in TESOL. Moreover, by analyzing language usage in cultural contexts, sociolinguistics provides insights into the social interactions and cultural norms that influence language use. This knowledge is essential for teaching English in a meaningful and culturally appropriate way. This will make the students to easily understand and can relate to the lesson, thus increases the chance for the students to score or get an excellent mark in the subject. Furthermore, TESOL is strongly influenced by the cultural context. Teachers can create a more productive and engaging learning environment by incorporating cultural education into language instruction, overcoming cultural barriers and implementing diverse methods of giving instruction. This is due to the fact that many students come from a different background and races. Therefore, overcoming cultural barriers is really crucial part as a teacher in class. These differences show how closely language is linked to the cultural context in which it develops, reflecting on social structures and cultural identities. Moving on to the last topic that we are going to discuss about, which is the learning theories in view of the cultural context of English. Cultural context shapes teaching English as a second language, learning theories and practices. Socio-cultural theory, in particular, lays this down and underlines the value of social interaction with a cultural context in learning languages. Vygotsky proposed that learning took place when individuals interacted meaningfully with others, whenever or wherever the learner was in their cultural context. For example, within the TESOL, students from various cultures come equipped with a diversity of communicative styles, values, and learning strategies that consequently affect how they learn English. So, in socio-cultural theory-based classrooms, teachers might have students work with peers to promote language learning or use culturally relevant examples to help students connect new knowledge with their cultural scheme. In the same way, communicative language teaching emphasizes the need to use language in real context and appropriate to its culture. In summary, cultural contexts have a big impact on TESOL and can really influence how the language is taught. Understanding the cultures and values of students is essential for enhancing the learning process and enhancing the proficiency in language in authentic, relatable context. Theories of learning like Vygotsky's social cultural theory place a strong emphasis on the role of social interactions and cultural assimilation, suggesting that language is fundamentally connected to its environment. Integrating culture into TESOL creates a more sensitive and aware atmosphere that enhances communication process and complements language acquisition with knowledge of this context in which this language are spoken. So the next one will be continued by my friend in the next topic. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and a warm good day. I bid to our respectable lecturer, Miss Khan, and to all my fellow TESOLian friends. And before everything else, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Shamil Emma bin Shu'aib, and it gives me a great pleasure to present this along with my distinguished partner, Harit and Natasha. And in collaboration, we try to extend understanding regarding how the context of English language use can influence the teaching of English as a second language. And just as Harit just pointed out, he contributed relevant observations about the cultural context in which English is used, together with the associated traps. In this section, I will discuss the next dimension, which is the situational context embedded in the use of English. And understanding the situational context is necessary because it underlines language variability in terms of settings, participants, and their communicative purposes. And factors such as formal versus informal settings, the audience present, and the purpose behind every interactions are very important to the way in which English is used. And in addition, I will discuss some of the more common situational issues, which is the global English versus local varieties of English, and accent and pronunciation. After that, Natasha will take over this discussion of the interpersonal context of English language use, adding yet another layer of depth to our discussion. So first, it is necessary for us to dwell upon the definition of situational context. Situational context is the specific conditions in which influence the linguistic choice in certain situations. So, for example, let us imagine a situation where one speaks to the whole educational institution. Due to their nervousness about speaking to an audience, they tend to speak with a greater speed than what they would in a discussion between their close friends. And another example that is applicable to the same situation is that a person tends to speak more softly during a tutoring session within the confines of a library opposed to when they are having a conversation in their home. So, drawing from previous observations, I have noted that my level of vocal expression tends to be significantly lower when having a study sessions in a library compared to when I'm at another place. So, therefore, what factors can be associated with the situational context in the pedagogy of English as a second language? So, according to Tragil and Hannah, 2008, the various varieties, dialects, accent, and regional features of English can be problematic for learners in contexts that are at once international and multilingual. So, one of the main issues in situational context is about global English versus local varieties of English. This becomes an important issue in the field of ESL, which means English as a second language, for the reason that English is not simply one uniform language, but it's a dynamic one filled with regional and global expressions. As the language spreads, distinct world Englishes have emerged that take different shapes according to local cultures, historical, and languages. And these varieties often differ not only in pronunciation and vocabulary, but also in grammar and usage norms. In fact, English has emerged as a lingua franca in many countries. However, the way it is used still varies a lot. For example, Indian English, they includes distinctive lexical items such as the word prepon instead of rescheduled to an early time, while Nigerian English might have some grammatical patterns determined by indigenous languages. These varieties of non-native English are sometimes referred to as outer circle Englishes, as opposed to the inner circle varieties such as American English or British English. So, this has created a challenge to ESL teachers where they may face a pressure to teach one standard form, usually based on British or American English. So, the students in real life, however, will be more likely to meet varieties of the language. This tension between traditional teaching norms and the preparation for global communication that is based on non-native Englishes is well documented. And Another issue that learner may be faced with is accent and pronunciation. Accent and pronunciation in ESL teaching involve the tension between the want for native-like accents and clear communication as a pragmatic objective. This tension is substantial because it influences not only learners' attitudes but also the teaching approaches themselves. The issues of many language learners of English as a second language, they want to have a native-like accent, is deeply tied to the prestige of perceived authority of British or American accent. These reasons for this The reason for this pursuit could in fact be warranted by a belief that sounding native will result in better communication or perhaps even more professional opportunities. Um, However, research indicates that instead, what should targeted is intelligibility, not the achievement of a native-like accent. Intelligibility is basically how well others perceive and understand a speaker, regardless of their accent. On the other hand, Derwing and Monroe, 2015, support the idea that efforts towards intelligibility allows learners to communicate with clarity without tension in trying to have an impeccable accent. Meanwhile, Jenkins, the year 2000, also expounds the varieties in accents need to be promoted as part of the world landscape in English. And some accents in the language are more prestigious, um, with most models from native speaking countries, like received pronunciation in the UK or General American in the US. And the impression of this may make learners focus more on acquiring an accent rather than learning to communicate effectively. And it is even more stressful when one feels compelled to sound like a native, which may turn out to be against their progress. And students will become frustrated if there is a feeling that its desired accent is not being achieved, even when their pronunciation is clear and understandable. It contributes to anxiety, which has the potential to negatively impact willingness to practice and use English in real-life situations. So, how can we address these issues using current teaching methods? Accent and pronunciation can be addressed using the current teaching methodology, namely communicative language teaching or CLT and task-based language teaching or TBLT. Here is how you can use these methodologies to eliminate the worries about native-like accents and focus more on intelligibility. For CLT, it focuses on the interaction valued as principal means of learning a language. It is communicatively oriented and reflects a balance of attention to grammatical, lexical, and oral practice. It aims to developing a competence of learners in using English appropriately in life situations. And teachers can do an intelligibility over accent perfection by incorporating activities that prioritize meaningful communication rather than perfecting pronunciation. This is according to Richards and Rogers in the year 2014. Meanwhile, for TBLT, teachers can do a task based pronunciation practice by incorporate pronunciation practice into tasks by setting a specific pronunciation goals within each task. That is all from me. Thank you. Let's continue with Natasha.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nur Natasha Nabila binti Muhammad Jafri, and I am from Intake 2023-2028 TESOL. So for today, I will be presenting about how the environment of interpersonal communication might influence the teaching of English as a second language. First of all, we'll look at how understanding this context affects teaching methods, strategies, and the use of current ideas to improve language learning. First of all, by understanding the interpersonal context. the interpersonal environment encompasses the social interactions and relationships that exist between persons. These involve exchanges between students and teachers in an English as a second language classroom, which is an ESL classroom. So effective communication in these settings has a substantial impact on the language itself. For example, the current issue, which is the cultural differences in the interpersonal communication. One urgent question in interpersonal relationships is how cultural differences influence communications techniques. So, based on an article, which is an unresolved cultural differences between students and teachers can lead to misinterpretations of students' behavior or teachers' expectation on both sides. So students from diverse cultural origins, for example, may have varying levels of comfort with assertiveness or eye contact and conversational turn taking. So these disparities can have an impact on their involvement and language development. So, secondly, the relationship between context and linguistic. So, in interpersonal communication, it is critical for language learning, both linguistically and social-linguistically. So, social-linguistic focuses on how language use differs in different social environments and interactions. So understanding these varieties in ESL allows teachers to adjust their instruction to match the various requirements for their pupils. So cultural standards about politeness and formality, for example, can have an impact on how pupils use teachers' English in social situations. So for the third one, which is the theoretical frameworks and strategies, second language learners often lack social linguistic competence in the target language. So facing issues in understanding and using language appropriately according to the context and situation by Abdurrahman to deal with cultural disparities in interpersonal communication, we can use a variety of instructional theories and strategies. For example, the social cultural theories, which according to Vygotsky, a kid will perform well when given help from others to complete a task while working alone. So Vygotsky's social cultural theory emphasizes the role of social interaction in learning. So according to this notion, social interaction promotes language development. So providing opportunities for authentic engagement in the ESL classroom, such as role-playing, group activities, it can assist students in navigating cultural barriers and improving their language abilities. Other than that, under the communicative language teaching, which is the CLT, CLT emphasizes using language for meaningful communication. So it encourages students to engage in real-life interactions. It allows them to adapt to various interpersonal situations. Strategies such as task-based learning, in which students execute activities in English, can be especially beneficial. So other than that, moving on to intercultural communicative competencies, which is the ICC. ICC is the ability to comprehend and engage successfully with people from diverse cultures. So raising knowledge of cultures, norms, and offering practice in a variety of communication contexts are example of one of the ICC informed teaching process and practices. So under these things that I said, the fourth one is to link the theory to these things about what I said, which we can link to the subject songs and poems in primary ESL classroom. Okay, as we all know, on the first year of the first year and of PISMP degree, for the language for the subject songs and poem, which we can link to primary ESL classroom, regardless of numerous studies supporting the effectiveness of utilizing music and songs in second language teaching. There is a remarkable limited amount of research investigating how music and songs are actually used by language teaching and belief underpinning their practices. So particularly in a Malaysian educational context, these theories can utilize in the context of songs and poems in the primary ESL classroom. So as follows, such as social cultural theories, which is under the songs and poem, it can be used to create engaging and immersive experiences, for example, group singing or recitation activities. So it can promote social contact while also allowing students to practice language in a supportive atmosphere. So secondly, which is under the communicative language teaching, which is the CLT, that I just said just now, it can be linked into the songs and poem to CLT tactics, which helps the student to interact with language in a meaningful way. So activities like writing their own poems or songs can help them grasp how language is used in different social situations. So moving on to intercultural communication competencies, which is the ICC, that can be related to this topic, which is songs and poem, is from different cultures, can introduce students to a variety of linguistic and cultural viewpoints. So this not only improves their language skills, but also their capability to communicate effectively in a variety of cultural circumstances. So, in conclusion, recognizing the interpersonal context of language use is critical for effective ESL instruction. So teachers can address cultural variety and improve students' language by implementing theories such as cultural theory, communication, language learning, the CLT, and intercultural communication competencies, that is the ICC. So incorporating with songs and poetry, both of them into the curriculum, is a dynamic method to integrate these strategies, and in the same time it can promote both linguistic ability and cultural under the ESL classroom in this topic. So that's all from me. Thank you.